Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Formex Watch's Reef wristwatch right here. So first off though, in the name of full disclosure, I want to thank Formex very much for sending this guy along. Sending this guy along? Yeah. I actually reached out to them this time. A buddy of mine said, Nick, do you know about Formex? What are your thoughts? I said, I don't, but I want to find out. And so I messaged him. I said, hey guys, I'm interested in checking out one of your pieces. I sent him my full review disclaimer, which says I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk. They still did send it along. Nonetheless, we do have to assume this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and I'm doing my best not to let that affect the nature and quality of my review. Next thing, let's go on ahead and do a size comparison here. First off, actually, I want to do some measurement for you, just to give you a sense of this. This has, these kind of ears on the thing are reasonably wide. It brings it to about 48 millimeters overall, but if we just look at the overall, at the bezel here, we come in much closer to 41 millimeters, and if we're just looking at the face of the watch, we are relatively svelte, coming in here around 29 millimeters. So there is that. The lug-to-lug distance, which is, I think, the most important measure for people who are slight of wrist like myself, coming in at about 49 millimeters worth. And then the overall thickness of this guy, there were many ways to go about measuring that, but it was someplace between 11 and 12 millimeters here overall. So not a particularly thick watch. And then the lug distance here is 22 millimeters if you want to use an aftermarket strap. So there is that. And then actually a couple of other quick size comparisons. First off, against the Omega Seamaster Professional. We see here is that the Seamaster Pro is a great watch, but it's also a lot bigger. Both visually, this feels a lot bigger and bolder than the Formex does. Also, it's thicker on this dimension here, and given that's one of its main faults, but it's a very thick watch. And we also see that the links here are much thicker and beefier overall, as is the clasp. This guy definitely feels bigger and heavier than the Formex does, even though they're sort of their overall dimensions aren't that different. And then the other watch that's, I think, worth bringing into this is the Monta Noble. This is an amazing watch by another one of these micro brands that's trying to disrupt the market a little bit. And so the Noble is a much smaller watch, absolutely 100%, much thinner and whatnot. But they have a very similar ethos, I feel like, as companies. And so I figured it's worth bringing that in. Then finally, a quick note. This is this company here, Formex, they are not aiming for budget. This is a relatively expensive review a lot of knives. Relatively expensive watch. This would be very expensive for a knife. This is $1,790. As you are seeing here on the flesh, I'm actually adding in the bracelet, or the strap would add in a little bit more, but nonetheless, that is the total price here, $1,790. And so there you go. Let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting little watch here. To start with, honestly, I love the face of this watch. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see some of the details here, but this is very, very well done. To start with, the face on it actually has a little bit of a dégradé look. What I mean by that is that you can see, especially if I put some light on it from another kind of angle here, you can see that not only is there a little bit of radial polishing to it, but it's a little bit lighter in the center. The coloration is a little bit more saturated in the outside relative to the inside there. It's not an illusion that you're seeing. That's actually there, and it's much more prominent in the sunlight. There's also a lot of richness to the face of it, because you can see here that you've got, for instance, each one of these little indices has a flat brushed portion on the top as well as some polish on the side. Same thing with the hands, which actually have a bend to them. These are not just flat hands. So the hands, actually, those bends with the mirror polish on the side of them, make this guy much easier to see in low light, even when the lume isn't charged. Speaking of the lume is great here. I'm going to go ahead and charge this off camera with a reasonably powerful flashlight. And what we're going to see is that, yeah, that's some quality lume. Actually, this little disturbance there was probably just where the second hand was when I flashed it. The lume here is really good. This is all night long sort of super luminova lume. Absolutely great. And then the handset is very nice, with a nice date window. In that little scoop into the date window going down, those are nice little details. So on the whole, I really like the face of this watch. It's very legible. 12 o'clock is visible even late at night with lume because it's got two pips rather than just one. This is just a really nice, legible, and beautiful face to the watch. Next thing, actually, the finishing on this guy is good overall, and I can kind of keep showing that off. But with things like, for instance, if we look on the side of the case here, you can see, well, exactly what's going on. You see very nice reflections here. The ceramic on this bezel here is very nice as well, and then it actually does have some polish polish to it, right? The ceramic looks good, and it actually is much more legible than you might think, even though it is all just ceramic of the same color. The contrast between a gloss finish and a blasted finish, or it looks blasted in there, is very, very nice, and I think is very subtle, but very impressive. The logo here, if we look at the face itself, what we see is the logo is not just painted on. The logo is an applied thing. It is a piece of polished metal sticking out separately from the dial, which is something I very much appreciate, along with the typography here, which is absolutely fire, almost borderline like microgramma sort of thing, especially the chronometer bit. I wouldn't be shocked if that were a derivation of that typeface there. And then just even the little polished bits here and there along the bracelet, this is just a really nice, and then the clasp here, yeah, absolutely very, very nicely done. And even if we look at the back of this, yeah, they've done a lot of really nice things to make this look good. Next thing, the bezel on this guy. The bezel is good to go. I'll zoom out a little bit so you're not that crazy. But bezel, unidirectional dive bezel. Not a whole lot of play to it. Works well, easy to manipulate, but not too easy. Loomed pip, can't really argue with that. And it is actually surprisingly legible. Like I said, it's definitely not something you're going to be able to see late at night, or, relative to something with loom in the pip, or I'm sorry, in the numbers themselves. Yeah, not going to be that legible. But at the same time, that is very nice. I appreciate it very much, and it works out pretty well there. Next thing, one of the things I like about this is that they've done a very nice job of making it configurable. You're not getting, 15 reference numbers, each one 28 digits and, inscrutable. But you just go to their website and you order what you want. Actually, you have a bunch of different options. You have different bracelets, so ranging from the metal bracelet here to a rubber bracelet. We'll talk about it a bit here. But they also have different colors of bezel here. So you can get this outer ceramic bezel in blue, black. This is the blue, by the way. Black, gray, or green. You got the dial also in blue, black, gray, or green, and you can mix and match those. So if you want a blue dial with a black outer part, you could, or maybe the silver. That's the only other one I would have liked to see in the flesh. I like the blue a lot, but so I ended up choosing this one, sort of designed as it is here. But there were many different options for you, and you can create a watch that is really to your taste, and I think all of the options look pretty solid, right? So I like that configuration. Next thing, the strap on this guy is quite good. So this is a little rubber strap here, and I'll go ahead and I'll show you how it kind of works on the watch. How did he just release that? Well, actually, that brings me to the next bit here, which is that both the strap and the bracelet here have a quick release function with this little bit here. If you just press towards the watch, it will pop away, and then you can just go on ahead and install this guy. Put this at 6. You can do exactly the opposite to install the strap onto the watch here. Come on there. Perfect. And so you can install the bracelet or the strap very, very straightforwardly. Come on, get in there. This is me not being a brilliant man trying to keep this action under camera, right? I swear it's easier than I'm making this look. There we go. And, oh, we are so close to in. Anyways, I digress. I'll just leave it like this for the moment and stop fighting it, because what you see here is that not only is this a fitted bracelet, so it matches the watch exactly, but the important thing about it is that this has something I have never seen before. So in practice, it's a Breitling style clasp, right, where the tongue goes inside here rather than the Ahagao folding strap where the tongue's hanging out, flopping everywhere. This is definitely an improvement. But one of the cool things you've got is this little button right here. What that little button right here does is it offers you a toolless quick adjust for the bracelet. And mind you, all bracelets are toollessly quick adjustable at some level. You can change that, but this gives you a level of gradients, right? So I can push in deeper, and now it stops, and I can keep pushing, pushing, pushing. And then if I want a little bit more length, I just pinch this and pull out. And so you can get different gradations in length straightforwardly. So if your wrist swells just a little tiny bit, you can give yourself a little bit more length. This is brilliant. I love a toolless quick adjust clasp on anything, but seeing it on the rubber in this way is really, really good. This is one of the best rubber straps I have ever seen, exactly for that reason. Not only is it a full, there we go, see, that time I got it perfectly. Not only is it an attractive looking rubber strap with the right style of clasp and everything like that, but it has that toolless quick adjust, which is very uncommon. And is still, by the way, nicely branded here. So I just love that. That's really, really good. So I appreciate that very much. It is also a watch that has a fair amount of durability to it. Here, I'll take off the rubber here. and throw the metal back on as I'm talking about this. This is a watch that has a fair amount of durability. It's got features that are going to make it a little bit more in the way of, well, resilient in the world. Not only is it a 300-meter worth of water-resistant sort of watch, which basically means you don't have to worry about water anymore. Any kind of water that's deep enough to kill this watch is also deep enough to kill you, so problem solved, right? And also, it has it's got a sapphire crystal on here with an anti-reflective coating, so it's very good. And the bezel here is not some kind of a metal. This is a zirconium oxide ceramic, which is going to be much more difficult to scratch than your usual thing. So I appreciate very much that they've gone that extra mile. See, and we're back on the bracelet. No tool required. So that's good. Next thing, the movement on this guy is good to go. This is a Sellita SW300-1, which is a fine workhorsey sort of movement. Lots of folks use it. But more importantly, with 42-hour power reserve, a quick set date, meaning that you can take it, pull all the way out here, and the watch will hack. And that stops the second hand. If I push in part of the way, I can rotate this and change the date a little bit. And nonetheless, it's a fine movement in that way, but they have taken the time to get it COSC certified, which certifies that it is within a certain accuracy standard, which is great. It is a tight standard, and that is the kind of thing you want, because a watch has one damn job, and that is to tell you the time properly. And there are people who have mechanical watch Stockholm syndrome and don't care about the accuracy of their watches. Well, great, then you're buying a bracelet, right? But this is actually, they take the time to get it certified. They include the certification certificate. That is a beautiful thing, and this is run very accurately on my wrist. The other nice part about this being a Sellita SW300 is that they're everywhere, and therefore it's very easy to service. Parts are readily available, and even a local watchmaker should be able to do a very good job of servicing this particular watch. Versus something that is more proprietary, like an Omega coaxial movement, you're going to have to send it there. So I appreciate very much that this has an easy-to-service, great workhorse movement, that they have taken the time to make sure that it's not just accurate, but they're guaranteeing that, and that's beautiful. Next thing, the bracelet. This is an amazing bracelet in a bunch of ways. One of the things you're going to see is that these are screws here, and it doesn't go through to the other side. These are just screws. So you unscrew and screw this together, which makes adjusting the links very, very easy. But more importantly, the links themselves are relatively short, which means that it's very easy to get this exactly the size that you want it to be. You can take out and add links with impunity because they're screw down, and you can remove little tiny gradations, which means this will fit your wrist exactly. And you can move them all the way to whichever side. It gives you lots of adjustability here. But then inside the clasp itself, what you have here is a quick adjust clasp. And actually here, I'm going to demonstrate it by popping this little bit out so you can see more clearly. Inside this, there is another button. And when you press this button, it allows you to pull this guy further in. And then when you press it, it allows it to go back out again. Actually, you can push it in without clicking that button. But nonetheless, this fixes the bracelet at a certain point of extension. And that means that you have basically an entire link worth of extension, a little bit more than a link, maybe a link and a half or so, worth of extension toollessly right there available to you. So if your watch is wearing a little bit hot, it's hot out, your wrist swells up, you can give yourself a little bit of extra room. And in very tight gradations, right? It's not just on or off, it's 1, 2, 3. That's a beautiful freaking thing. This is a really great quick adjust system. And if your watch is wearing a little loose, you can just press the thing on your wrist. You just press this in a little bit, and then it tightens up a little bit. This is just a really great system. It is one of my very favorites, and it works really, really well, too. And given that the bracelet also has this quick release feature, this is just great. This is an amazing bracelet. And if every watch bracelet were made this well, oh boy, would I have a lot less to complain about in the world. So that's good. And then that actually brings me to the next piece, which, with the bracelet and also the size of this guy. The size of this guy is nominally a 42, but in practice, it ends up wearing a lot smaller than, for instance, the Omega Seamaster here. It wears a lot smaller than a lot of watches that are equivalent because it's relatively thin and because it's relatively smooth. Like you've got this little area kind of ramps you on and off. This is a very, very, and the thin bracelet, as well as just overall, it's not that heavy of a watch either. Where's my... So both of these watches I'm going to show you are going to be adjusted to my wrist. They are ready to go for my wrist. This guy is, hold on, let me get the bracelet on there all the way. This guy is coming in at 5.88 ounces, as opposed to the Seamaster here, which is going to come in here at about 6.0 ounces. This guy ends up wearing a little bit lighter because it is lighter, but it's also closer to the wrist. It's closer to the center of gravity of the wrist. There's not as much underneath there. This just wears really exceptionally well, especially on my relatively small wrist, coming in around 6.5 inches or so. So that's a thing. And so this ends up being very much nice on the wrist, and in many ways nicer than the Seamaster here. This just wears great, and with that adjustability, with that clasp, it's just good to go. So to me, all of that is the good. It is that it wears really well. It's got a great size, an amazing bracelet, a great movement, a good resilience in terms of overall features there, a very nice rubber strap option. It's configurable with a nice bezel, nice finishing, and a really nice face. To me, what's great about this watch is that they've gone above and beyond in every sense in terms of value here. This is a watch that basically they have taken every step that it seems like they could. There is not anything that they have done with this watch that I feel like is a cut corner in any way, right? And in fact, they've gone and they've hit some extra things, right? Having quick adjust and quick removal on the bracelet is really nice. Doing the same thing on the rubber bracelet, wow. Going Kosk, really impressive, right? Good loom, good finishing. This is what it feels like when a luxury watch brand is trying to compete on product, not on name, right? I love this, and it's a nice reminder of just how much more you get when you are not buying a brand necessarily, but buying a watch. And certainly, with a work like this, Formex will become a formidable, I don't know, brand. But right now, you are getting so much value out of this. This is not cheap, but this is a high-end luxury watch with high-end luxury watch features, but they're doing it at a price that is half or a quarter of what some of the other big companies are charging. I really do appreciate that. So to me, what's great here is that they have gone so far above and beyond in terms of value that this thing ends up feeling like a tour de force and feels so incredibly effortful that I couldn't help but love it. On the bad side, there's not that much wrong here. I mean, to start with, some folks aren't in love with the ears on the case. I actually like it. I think it looks pretty attractive, but definitely for people who are really sensitive to width of a watch, that could be problematic. Fine by me. Next thing, the color of the bezel doesn't match the color of the face exactly. This is very hard to show off on camera, and it kind of varies from light to light. This bezel, by the way, is relatively subtle. In dark light, it ends up looking just black, basically, as does the face to an extent. But this ends up feeling a little more green than the sort of darker Prussian blue, if you will, of the bezel here. So I appreciate very much, I would appreciate very much if they just match those tones a little tiny bit more. Not a big deal, but it's a thing. Next thing, this guy does not have a diver's extension. It has this Toolless quick adjust, which gives you a little bit, but compared to a more classical diver's extension, which gives you an extra additional large bit of things in case you are actually going diving with your dive watch, which, to the best of my knowledge, no one actually does anymore, but nonetheless, it's a thing. But it doesn't have that. I think this clasp is good enough. I'm not going to complain about it, but that is a thing to keep in mind. It also has a closed case back, meaning there's not like a window in the back of it there where you can see the movement of the watch inside. Is this the end of any worlds? No, not particularly, but one of the nice things of a mechanical watch is being able to see the mechanism, right? And so that isn't something I particularly love, but the watch is thin, so I can't argue too much with that. Next thing, the bracelet here. The only beef I have with this bracelet is that these sharp corners here are, well, a little bit sharp. These could be rounded just a hair, and that would make it a little less likely to catch on things or to scratch things up. Right? Not the end of any worlds, but it's definitely an area where they could do it a little bit of an improvement there. Then next thing, they unfortunately, so I mentioned that they've got a lot of configuration options for this, but one of the things they do not have is a strap that matches the color here. I would have liked to have seen a strap on this guy that matches the blue of the face and the dial. Instead, you've got the black on blue, and it just never ended up looking particularly good for me. The other issue with this strap is that I have relatively small wrists here. You can see, actually, that I am on the smallest of the holes, so to speak, to be properly put on there, but as a result, you end up with a whole bunch of this hanging up inside the watch, basically. And that makes this guy wear very awkwardly. The clasp ends up being very, very thick on this guy. And, certainly I could cut this away, right? And if I were keeping the strap, I would absolutely cut that away. And that would make things a little bit better. But still, as a result, this strap doesn't wear as well for somebody with small wrists as the bracelet does. And I wore it on the strap a few times in preparation for the review, but for me, on my relatively small wrist, this just didn't do it for me. I ended up going back to the bracelet, which I absolutely love. And then finally, on the bad side, it isn't cheap. right? That's not bad, but it's just a fact of life, right? Because, this is a $1,750 watch, right? That's a lot of freaking money. You can get an amazing quartz watch for $200-300. Great mechanicals, 400 to 500 from folks like Seiko. Otherwise, look, this is not a watch. If you just like, oh, I need a wristwatch, you don't have to go this far down the rabbit hole. Do not get into watches. But at the same time, it is hard to question the value, even though the price is quite high. It is going to put it out of range for a bunch of people. This is that weird paradox of high cost, high value luxury watch. Most people are going to think you're insane, but I think it's actually a really smart buy. On the ugly front, this is actually making some of the other brands look a little bit ugly, but there's nothing ugly about the watch itself. Because this is, final conclusion, a really, really good watch, right? It's got a great face, nice finishing, a nice bezel, lots of configurability online, a unique strap, good durability, good movement, amazing bracelet and size, which make it wear really well. And all of this adds up to a feeling of effort that makes this feel like an amazing value, even if it is very, very expensive, relative to, well, the kind of watch sane people wear, right? It does have a couple of downsides with a few little nitpicks, the closed case back, some sharp corners on the bracelet here, and a rubber strap that's not as great for smaller wrists, and a price that's way out of range for a lot of folks still. But honestly, this blew me away. They have put so much effort into this watch to earn that price point, and it's just delightful because you're ending up here with a watch that is not just attractive, and it's not just functional, and it's not just wearable, it's also full of all of these little technical and finishing touches, the bracelet thing, the quick releases that just go way above and beyond the call of duty, so to speak, and the resulting watch here is not just excellent on its own, but it's really amazing in contrast, right? This is one of the micro-brand style watches, and Monte is another in this same category that leave me feeling really disillusioned with the big luxury brands. Like here, it feels like somebody at Formex sat down and decided, you know what, I want to add every little bit of effort I can. I want to do every damn thing right to hit this price point. Whereas it feels like another luxury brand might be, trying to figure out how little effort they can get away with, right? This is a company that is trying hard, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I mean that they have really put in the effort to make this feel like it's worth that price. And the end result is something that honestly feels as nice as the Seamaster, as nice as the Planet Ocean, as nice as the Black Bay, but comes in at less than half the damn price. And given the wearability of it, the fact that the bracelet really does add quality of life and whatnot, this is just really, really impressive. And it makes me wonder why am I looking higher in the market when there are things like this at this kind of a price point, right? Like I said, Monte is the other major micro brand doing it, and I think these two are very, very comparable. Not these two watches, but these two brands. Monte tends to be a little bit more delicate and polished focused in their designs, whereas Formex is maybe a little bit more of a toolish look, but together, these have me wondering whether it's even worth bothering the big names at this point, unless you're wanting the pretense as much as you're wanting the product, right? So this one is really good. In fact, this is one that took me a while to review. Nearly 2 months of regular wear on this guy because I wanted to be sure, and because it's really hard to tell this level of excellence from the honeymoon, right? There's always the fear of it. Am I just liking this because it's new? Like, no, I wore it until it stopped being new. And you know what? It's still a damn gem. This is not only a gem, but this is a keeper. This is a watch that, I think a week into it, maybe even sooner than that, I messaged him, said, hi, I'm keeping this watch. Let's settle up, right? This has been really hard to kick off my wrist because between the style, the wearability, and the features, it's just been really, really good to go. And given that extra wearability and comfort, I mean, in many ways, it's been beating out the Seamaster Pro as a watch to go on my wrist. This just feels better on my wrist of my size than the Seamaster does. I love this watch. It's a great watch, but in terms of finishing, they're not so dissimilar. This one's got some technical ups. This one's maybe a little polishier. Look, they're both really good, but this is really cheaper, right? And so this really blew me away. And so my overall conclusion is, if you're after a dive watch that is still definitively a high-end luxury watch, but you're wanting to pay a mid-range luxury price, then you know what? The Formex is absolutely Form U. It's unbelievably good. It's a good way to mix things up in your collection. Go for some nachos and you'll have the Vortex mix. No. Okay, anyways. Hope this has been interesting to you. Really well done, Formex. And I'm definitely going to be checking out some of their other work because this this blew me away. And this was an expensive review. Oh, can I check it out? Can I get a loaner? He says like an idiot. Anyways, beautiful watch. And hope this has been interesting to you. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.